year was 1964, and America had never seen such times. Congress passed the Civil Rights Bill ending legal segregation of the races. Gasoline had climbed to a whopping 30 cents a gallon. Pop-Tarts appeared on America's breakfast tables for the first time. Americans were singing along with the Beatles' She Loves You. And in the Quad Cities, the first meeting of a new organization was held, one that would grow over the next 40 years to serve its burgeoning membership and people of the community. The seeds of the Quad City Bicycle Club were actually sown on a snowy November night in 1963 when three avid cyclists hatched the idea. Fred Blesson, an American, René DeLange, a Belgian, and John Hood Sr., an Englishman, sat around the DeLange kitchen table and conceived of a club to provide local citizens the opportunity for a wide variety of bicycling pursuits. At the time, the sport of bicycling was enjoying a national resurgence, spurred by the Kennedy administration's health awareness campaigns and the President's Council on Physical Fitness. Between 1960 and 1966, bicycle sales increased from 3.8 million to 6 million per year. None were more enthusiastic than Blesson, DeLange, and Hood. And so on January 10, 1964, interested bicyclists were invited to attend the first meeting of the Quad Cities Bicycle Club. Officers were elected, a constitution drafted, and the electorate chose blue and yellow as the club's official colors. And this small band of pioneers set off to make the club's vision a reality, to promote, encourage, and support safe participation in bicycle riding of all ages and abilities, and to anticipate and address the needs and interests of all aspects of bicycling in the Quad Cities area. The club was off and running. In September of that very first year, a race was held in East Moline which drew more than 40 participants and an estimated crowd of nearly 3,000 spectators. The race was called the Kermesse, Belgian for Around the House, and although the name would prove to be temporary, the Criterium in East Moline would become one of the club's biggest ongoing successes, moving first to Moline and then to Rock Island. 27 QCBC membership cards were issued in 1964, and the club looked forward to planning upcoming social, training, and competitive rides. In 1965, the Criterium was moved to Moline's 7th Street area. Prizes and trophies totaled $300 for the 51 racers. Racing members in the first 5 years included John Hood Sr., John Hood Jr., Dale Hallberg, Jim Green, John Schwartz, Mel Bradley, and then juniors Mike Giudice and John Miller, to name a few. Roger DeLange organized bicycle races at the East Moline Fairground at a time when the stock car track was paved. Another Criterium in East Moline was well promoted by future QCBC president Bob Seberg in 1968. By 1969, 600,000 Americans were fighting in Vietnam. Neil Armstrong's moon landing mesmerized the nation. A music festival was held in upstate New York that would define a generation. And those who weren't attending Woodstock may have gone to see a showing of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. For the QCBC, times were busy. Social outings, including Saturday afternoon and weekend rides, had begun to grow, along with a nationwide increase in the popularity of bicycle touring. A popular club tour in 1968 through 1970 was a one-day ride to Harpers Ferry, Iowa, a 165-mile journey ending with an overnight stay in a youth hostel. The first Century ride took place in 1969, at that time limited to club members only. Davenport had begun to talk about building bike paths. A monthly newsletter kept members informed, and a new QCBC family membership had been added, costing the whopping total of $4. 1969 was a benchmark year. Under the leadership of club president Fred Blesson, the groundwork was laid that would help grow the QCBC in the years ahead. Safety awareness became a priority, along with the election of a board of directors and several changes to the club's governing structure. With the withdrawal of a major sponsor of the Criterium, the club rallied and raised the funds to sponsor the race for the first time. The Criterium program expanded to include senior men, novice, junior men, and citizens. The 1969 senior men's race was won by John Howard, who would become an American road racing legend in the 1970s and 80s. The next 5 years brought expansion. Carter LeBeau took the lead in promoting the club's events to the public. This ongoing effort not only expanded participation in cycling events, but put the identity of the club in the public eye.
I think that the obvious thing that was going on in the country was people were getting interested in bicycling. And we decided that we ought to have something more than just racing, so I think I was sort of responsible for moving them into this other arena.
The early foundations were laid for what would become the ride schedule, a major element of the club's agenda. Exposure to the larger cycling community was enhanced by membership in the League of American Wheelmen. As membership, activities, and events grew, committees were formed to formally address some of the club's priorities. A ride schedule committee, a bikeways committee, and a racing committee all worked to develop and improve their areas of bicycling in the Quad Cities.
In the early 70s, the bike club was real instrumental in launching our careers as bicycle racers, because you needed a foundation to go from. And it was a small club back then. It wasn't like it is today.
With each passing year and its successes, the club's identity came into sharper focus. During this period, club patches and jerseys became available and were very popular among the members. In 1972, Fred Blesson organized the Quad Cities' first bike-a-thon, held to raise funds for a Davenport bikeway. Fred himself designed the course and presented it to then-Mayor Kathy Kirschbaum, herself a QCBC member. As 1973 came into view, the Quad Cities Bicycle Club had earned its place as a well-established community organization, with membership in the hundreds and event participation in the thousands. And world events were about to have a massive impact on it and the sport of cycling across the country. In 1973, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, raised the price of petroleum sharply. The resulting fuel shortage caused long lines in America's gas pumps, and alternatives to automobile transportation became very popular. Using a bicycle for errands and commuting, as well as for recreation, boosted the interest in cycling in the United States.
Initially, cycling was kind of a hippie type thing. You were kind of a dork or something if you were a cyclist in the 60s. People kind of looked at you like you were something wrong with it. But then when the 70s and 80s came along, it became mainstream.
Cycling also benefited from a burgeoning environmental movement and drastic improvements in bicycle design. Americans turned their attention to the sophisticated offerings of European developers who had made bicycles more attractive and easier to ride by radically reducing their weight and adding gears to help with climbing hills. Here at home, individual sporting events were also on the rise. 1970 had seen the first Quad Cities Open, a golf tournament that would become the elite John Deere Classic of today. A little road race, dubbed the Bix 7, debuted in the Quad Cities in 1974. The QCBC was feeling the positive effect of the increased popularity of fitness and cycling nationwide and doing its part to promote the sport. Although the Moline Criterium was not held in 1972, its absence prompted Davenport racer Mel Bradley and QCBC president Terry Burke to take up the standard and get the event rolling for the following year. In 1973, the Criterium returned, with Renee DeLange soliciting sponsors and Roger DeLange providing colorful commentary. Debbie Bradley gained notoriety by winning the National Road Racing Championship in 1973 and the Moline Criterium Women's Race in 1973 and 1974. Margaret Paulos helped publicize the club by organizing a very successful QCBC exhibit booth at the Mississippi Valley Fair. Also in '73, Carter LeBeau's Mississippi Valley Century Ride was open to the public for the first time. 135 riders started from Credit Island, and the event was covered by local newspapers, a rarity at the time. The first registered annual bicycle ride across Iowa, or RAGBRAI, ended its 1973 course in Davenport's Vanderveer Park. Mayor Kirschbaum and many QCBC members welcomed the crowd.
Boy, when I came back, there was 4 Quad City Bicycle Club people on that first ride, and I guess it's not anything anybody doesn't know, but I'm the only one left that's been on all 32 of these rides for the last 32 years.
In years to come, QCBC bus service